Phil, thanks very much for coming up to the summit today here in Glasgow. You're coming up from Swansea, and you're in a very different position to the many of the trusts at the moment. Tell me about your journey with the trust.
Well, I mean, we've been running now 15 years, so we've got a 21% stake in the football club. We've got a full executive director on the board who's involved in every day-to-day decision that the board's involved in. It's been a long journey. We were founded like many trusts are, I guess, when the club's at rock bottom. We galvanised the fans all sort of united behind the football club and behind the trust, and I guess it almost just escalated from there. I know it sounds really simplistic, and probably more simplistic than it really was, but when everyone's working together and pulling in the same direction, I think pretty much anything can happen, and our progress as a football club and a trust is evidence of that.
As you say, when you got involved in the trust, it was at rock bottom. But normally, when that happens with trusts, the club then continues to sort of skate along the bottom. You've rocketed up both financially in the leagues and everything else. What do you put that success down to?
I think there were several things. I guess from the club's point of view, we had a vision that we believed in as a club, and obviously being an integral part of that's key. So that was just to work within budgets, make sure that we spend money on the right things, that we don't take unnecessary risks. From the trust point of view, it was really back the club and make sure that everyone, where possible, try and get as many supporters into the ground, etc., to try and build the atmosphere behind the club. We got a lot of work that we did with the local council to get the move of stadium. That was a massive thing, because that pretty much doubled the number of people that can come in and watch us week in, week out. And you need the old-fashioned, I suppose, stroke of luck as well. You make the right decisions on and off the pitch just at the right time, like an appointment of a manager or the sale of a player or the replacement of a player, something like that. You just need luck with it at the same time.
How much do you think the success is down to the fact that you are now operating in a league where there is money there? You can aspire to do things and then you can get the money to back up these aspirations.
Yes, you can to a degree, although I was talking to someone earlier on today that the turnover that you get in the Premier League is it's astronomical. You're talking £100 million plus turnover. In much the same way as though when the turnover is £1 million, the bulk of that goes straight into the pockets of the players and the agents and the management. So there isn't massive amounts of money there. You've still got to try and balance the books. But one thing we were very keen on as a football club was to make sure that we invested in the infrastructure at the same time. So we haven't blown everything on the playing budget. We've got a lot that we've developed behind the scenes that's important. So the financial aspect of the Premier League certainly helped. But I think we were already on that footing before we got into the level. We've just never changed the philosophy.
Most fans will start from the position of the first thing they need to do is save their club. Then they have to stabilise their club. What comes next?
Grow the club, which is probably the biggest challenge. Well, no, that is a lie. Saving it is by far the biggest challenge. That's the biggest one you'll ever have, because that's when probably everything feels against you. There's always a saying that when things are down and out, every turn you make probably sends you back a couple of steps and you have to start all over again. So you've got the saving, you've got the stabilising, and then it's just the growing. It's continue to believe in everything that got you to saving and stabilising in the first place. Don't let people forget. And remember, football's a cycle. Football will come back round and bite you on the backside again sometime. So be ready for the next time it goes to rock bottom, or if you can get there perfectly, stop it getting there when it's en route.
When you first started trying to raise money to buy into the club, how much were you looking to buy way back at the beginning? What was your first target?
The first target was really just a stake, any form of stake within the football club at that point in time. It then became £50,000, was the very first one. That would have given us the 5% shareholding that we wanted to start with, because the share capital was £1 million. And then from there it was just a case of to keep trying to double whenever we could. We're still at the stage of, if we can, ideally, we'd like probably about another 4% of the football club, because that just affords us extra protection. But £50,000 when it's all buckets being passed around a stadium is a lot of pound coins to be put into a bucket. But through the right efforts of fundraising and raffles and talking to the right people, eventually you get there.
How much is that stake worth now? 21% I think you've got.
Arguably 30 to 40 million. You would feasibly probably value a Premier League club at 150 to 200 million, so you're 30 to 40 million at this point in time. Of course, if relegation happens at any point in time, then that stake substantially reduces. But to us, it's not about the monetary value, it's about having that 21% stake and retaining that stake.
I was sort of building you up to this question, which I'd love to take credit for, but it's not mine. It's the one that you got in the Q&A session earlier on. Why aren't you at this stage thinking about selling a stake, some of your 21%, say 5 or 6% of that when it's worth millions of pounds, banking the money you get from it, and then if things ever do go bad for the club or it does find itself in a precarious situation in the future, you've got millions in the bank to go in and stabilise it again?
Any shareholding above 10% affords us a lot of protection. Any shareholding above 20% actually doesn't afford us more protection, but it keeps us more secure. It just means that we're a bigger entity for people to fight against. So if someone's doing something that we don't agree with, and we actually only own 12% for argument's sake, there's someone else owns 88% that they can argue against it. Even though 79 to 21 is still as emphatic, 21% is seen generally as a big stake, and it just, as probably now, I think we're the second biggest shareholder of Swansea City, that's just something we'd like to retain. We wouldn't like to see that reduce.
I would imagine you get a lot of fans groups at your door asking for advice on what they should do. What do you say to them when they turn up?
That's a question we've been asked so often in the last 5 years, and a lot of it's what we talked about today. It's in terms of believe in what you do, never defy that belief, ignore the people that continually will want to put you down at any point in time. Continue to just go along the journey that you started for the same reasons that you started it, and just work hard and talk to the right people, seek advice for the right people, and we're continually asking others for advice and saying, well, what do we do in this situation? And as a group of volunteers, you've just got to keep going on that route.
I suppose this is a strange one to ask, given the financial position that you're in, the good financial position you're in. But one of our final presentations today from Sean was all about how one of the things that fans really need to do is take a brutal assessment of the finances of football before they even think about getting involved in it. And it was quite a depressing presentation, actually, with what's going wrong with football. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, to an extent. I think there was something in the presentation that resonated for me, is that long-term financial stability is more important than short-term expenditure. And we're facing that battle at the moment of fighting against relegation from the Premier League, being asked to spend money to buy the players in the January transfer window, but not knowing whether those players will give us success, and just trying to get the balance. So financially, supporters aren't there to make money at the football club. Supporters are just there to make sure that it stays for a long time.
Now, I know you wouldn't ask this finally, but I'll give you a chance to say it. You've written about this, haven't you? So tell us about your book.
So From Graveyard to Ambition is the history of Swansea Trust. So it just tells you the whole story. I guess the book's probably split into two halves, really. The first part is all the history of how the trust came about, how the battle to actually save the football club evolved itself, and how we got to the position where we're currently in. And then the second half of the book talks a lot in terms of the ongoing battles that we continue to receive. So the things that we talked about with finances, how do we ensure that we retain a 21% shareholding? Because if the football club were to put out, I don't know, another £1 million or another similar number of shares as a share issue, we now have to find 20-30 million to maintain that shareholding, and that's not easy. So all the current battles that we do, the work that Hugh does as our supporter director on the board, so it's well worth the read to anyone that's got a belief in the Supporters Trust movement.
Phil, thank you very much.
No problem, thank you.